What's going on, guys? In this video, we're going to make a few changes to our application in Deno in order to use an ORM library with MySQL as the database. Remember to subscribe to the channel and let's get started. On a previous video, we created this server, this API, where we have this controller, and we created an array here to store the bands, and we created a couple of endpoints, this get endpoint to get the list of existing bands that basically retrieves this array. And we also created this endpoint to create new bands, where we basically generate a random identifier using this library, and then we push the band to the array. Now what we are going to do is we're going to replace this array, and we're going to use an ORM with MySQL, and we are going to store the bands using this MySQL database. First, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it model. And I'm going to create a class that is going to contain the mapping with the database. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to call this model band model. And here I'm going to use the same fields that I'm using here. An identifier, a name, the genre of the band, and the website. Okay, so this will be export class band model. And here I need to extend a base class of this ORM library. So this is extends, and the class is base model. So this class is part of the DSO framework, and this is the website, deno.land/x/DSO. And basically this library is an ORM that is based on this driver, that is this one. And basically this driver supports MySQL and MariaDB. And here is a reference back to the ORM. Here I need to import this mod.ts file. I'm going to use this version. I'm going to grab this from here, and I'm going to import this base model class from that URL. So this is base model from, and this is the URL. And here I'm going to specify the name of the table. So here I need to use this decorator, and the name of the table will be bands. Great. Okay, and the fields will be an identifier, that will be a number, and will be required, which is why I'm adding this here. And the same for name, and the rest of the fields. And website. And here I'm going to add some other decorators to create the mappings between these properties and the database columns. So this will be a field. And here I'm going to specify the type, and this will be field type, and in this case will be an int. Next, I'm going to specify that this identifier will be the primary key of the table. So this will be primary true. The length of this field will be 11. And this will be an auto increment key. So the value will be auto incremented every time that we create a new record. And this is an object, and I need to add this right there. And the rest of the fields will be pretty similar. So the type in this case will be a string, so field type dot, this is string. The length will be 50 characters, and we are going to make it not null. So these fields are mandatory. and the same for this one, and the same for this one. So here we have basically the mappings between the properties and the database columns. Okay, and the next step will be generating the database, actually this bands table, reading the metadata from here. So we are going to create a script, and we're going to create that new table here. I created this schema, this pragmatic schema. So we are going to run this script, and we're going to create the table here. Okay, so I'm going to create a new file for that script. I'm going to call it init ev. And here we need to basically import two things. We need to import this band model. So this is import band model from, and this is /model / band model .ts. And another thing that we need to import is the DSO library from this URL. So I'm going to grab this from here, and this will be import Deno simple ORM or DSO from, and this is the URL. Okay, first we are going to create a variable to access the environment variables, where I already created the username and the password to access the MySQL database that I have running in my local environment. So this is Deno or Deno dot env to object, and this will allow us to access the environment variables using things like env dot db username, for example. Another way to access the environment variables is by using deno.m.get. And here we specify, for example, db username. Okay, first I need to connect to the database, so I need to use dso.connect. And here I need to pass an object with the database connection details. And the properties are hostname, and in this case will be localhost. The port, that will be the default port for MySQL, that is 3306. Username, that is an environment variable that I already created, that is env.db username. And the password for the database, that is another environment variable, that is env.db password. And I already created that environment variable as well. And the database will be the schema, that is pragmatic in our case. Okay, and that's all we need to connect with the database. The next step that we need here is we need to create a variable to map the model. So this will be band model, lowercase here, and this will be equals to dso.define, and this will be band model. And this is the way that this ORM variable will pick up the metadata from the model that we created here, this one. Okay, and in order to apply the changes to the database, we need to run dso.sync. And if we pass through here, it's going to remove the table if it's already created. Now I'm going to run this. So this will be Deno run, and here we need to allow to access the network. And also we need to allow to access the environment variables. So this is allow env, and we need to pass this config file because we have decorators, and we need to specify that we are going to use those decorators here. So this is config equals, and this is tsconfig.json. And the name of the file, that is init.db.ts. And if we refresh here, we're going to see that we have the table. Besides the columns that we specified, we have these two fields, created at and updated at. So if we go here to the band model and we go to the base model class, we're going to see that it creates these two fields here, actually here. And because we extend this base class, we inherit all these fields, the updated at field and the created at field. Okay, let's go back. And now we're going to create a repository so we can connect our controller with the model and we can perform queries, we can create bands, and so on. So I'm going to create a new folder here and I'm going to call it repositories. Repositories. And I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it band repository. Okay, so this will be class and repository. And I'm going to export this class by default. And we are not going to receive any parameters here. And within this constructor, what we're going to do is connect to the database and create the mapping with the model that we created. So I'm going to grab some code from here. So this, actually this, and this. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to create it here. And actually the model will be a private property. So I'm going to add it here. So this is going to be private band model, and this is band model. And this is dot band model, like this. And I need to import a couple of libraries here. I'm going to grab them from here. Okay, and here we are going to start creating our methods. The first one will be a method to get all the existing bands from the database. So this will be find all. And within here, we are going to access our model and we're going to perform a query. So I'm going to create the query, const query, and this will be of type query. This is a special class from this library. And this will be new query. And here we're going to specify what is the table that we need. Table, that in our case is bands. And we're going to select all the fields from that. This is select and star. Like this. And I need to import this query class from here. DSO and query. Okay, I'm going to close this. And here I need to return the result of this query. So I need to use the model, this dot band model, and I need to perform the query by using the query method. And I'm going to pass the query value here. Okay, this is actually like this. And this query is going to return a promise. So here I need to use await, and here I need to use async. Okay, let's create another one to get a band by ID. So this is find by ID. And this is going to receive an identifier. This will be a string. And this is going to return wait. And this is this dot band model dot find by ID. And we pass the ID in here. And I'm going to create another method that will allow us to insert a new record in the database. So this will be async insert, and here we're going to pass a band, and the type will be this one. So I'm going to import this interface. So I'm going to paste it here, and this will be band. Okay, and here again, await is dot band model dot insert, and we need to pass an object here. So the object will be like this, and here we need to pass name. That will be band dot name. Genre, this will be band dot genre, and the website, this will be band dot website. Okay, and that's it for the repository. The next step will be using the repository from the controller, and we can start calling all these methods to get the list of existing bands, to get bands by ID, and also to create new bands. Okay, now let's move on to the controller. So first we are going to remove this array. We are not going to use it anymore. And here we're going to create the repo. So this will be private band repository. And this will be band repository. And here basically we're going to return this dot band repository dot find all. With the first one. Here we are going to remove all this, and we are going to remove this. And here we're going to use this dot band repository dot insert, and we're going to pass in the band like this. And I'm going to add another method here that is going to be pretty similar to the get bands method, but we're going to pass the identifier of the band that we want to get. So this will be ID, and this will be get band by ID. And here we need to use a special decorator that is param, where we specify the name of the parameter that we receive here in the URL. In this case is ID. So here this will be an ID, and this will be of type string, like this. And here we can get the result like this, const result, and this will be this dot band repository dot find by ID, and we pass the identifier here. And if we get a result, we return using the same structure that we are using here. And in this case, data will be the result. And if we don't get any result, that means that the record is not in the database for that identifier. So we can throw an exception. This is an exception that is provided by the Dactyl framework. So this will be new, and this is not found exception. Okay, and here I forgot to create a constructor to create a new instance of the repository. So here I'm going to add the constructor, this dot band repository equals to new band repository. Okay, before running the server, I forgot to add here async and await here for this final method that returns a promise, and the same for this find by ID that also returns a promise. So I also added await and async here. So I'm going to run the server. As we can see here, our Dactyl application is up and running. So let's go to Postman and let's get the list of bands. We're going to get an empty result. If we go to the database here, and if we run select star from pragmatic dot bands. We also gonna get an empty result here. Let's go back to Postman and let's create a new band. I'm going to run this and we get a successful response. We get a 201. If we go to the database and we run this query again, we're gonna get the record with the record that we just created. And if we go back again, and if we access by ID, we created the band with ID 1. So if I run this, we get the data of the band. And if we get the list of all the bands, we're going to get one record. That is the band that we created. So that's all I have for today. Thank you guys for watching, and I see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.